Okay, so I just went through this magazine that I got in the mail today, and I picked out a couple of pages that I thought were interesting for whatever reason. So I just want to share with you what I picked out and why I think they're interesting. This, I like the architecture, the background, and the dark, like bold coloring of the blue and the orange. So I think that's very interesting to me. This is actually Venice, Italy. So I definitely think that I can put that on a page, on a Gluebook page, because it's very striking. This, I have a thing for reflections. I really love reflections or anything that's doubled, that's like repeated. I don't know, it just, my eye just enjoys seeing that. So this is definitely something I would like to play around with, this double imagery here. And the fact that she's a silhouette may make it even more fun. This, I just thought this is very interesting. It's almost like dragon-like chandelier. So this is really cool. Definitely enjoyed that. The way that it's created. That's really striking. This was a label off a wine bottle. It's an advertisement on the page, but it's a label on a bottle. And I just thought this was very interesting because of all of the design elements in there. It's almost like a mandala. But it also has the repeated circles. Like there's a circle in this part right here. There's a circle there. And then there's a circle again around where the design element goes. And then there's the big circle around. So that repeated element of circles is also something I get drawn to. So that's something that would definitely be a good focus, good image to like add to a Gluebook page. And maybe with other circles or maybe with different like colors. Sometimes I would match the colors. So if this is pink and white and gray, I might add it with images that are pink, white, and gray. Other times I will look at it and say, okay, this is circles. I want to add other circles to the page. So it depends on what I'm going for, but I try to find a way of making the element work on a page. And sometimes that repeated element of a shape or the repeated element of colors may work really well in your favor to making it work well on a page and may draw some more interest for the eye. So that's something I just picked up when I was looking at this. Now this isn't really interesting per se, but this background is very blurred out of focus, like it's just subtle green, subtle circles there. You can see very clearly. That may make a good page on a background page for a Gluebook journal. I might use it with other things that a bold color focus image like a person, or I might use it to add more bold coloring circles to it, or go with straight green imagery because there is a subtle green in that background. But I like the background. It's something that I would use. It's something that I pay attention for when I'm looking for backgrounds, because you can't always find a background that's one whole page and perfect and ready to be built upon. Sometimes you have to take pieces and make them into a larger background. And this would definitely work. It's about half a page, give or take, of the background. So let me zoom out a bit. You can see it's a little less than that, but it's a good amount. That could definitely work with some neutral elements, maybe some tans, some light cream white colors, maybe another light green, even a light blue might even work with it depending on what the design element is. But I would stay with greens, browns, tans, cream color. I'm very pale because the background's pale. You don't want it to like feel like it doesn't belong. So you want to match these colors in some kind of way, this paleness, to make it keep working. Even book sets might even work well with that. But like say I do this color and then I go with dark like color like this, it may not work well in the background. It might not feel like one piece. It might feel divided. So you want to keep that in mind when you're building a background, that you want it to somewhat be cohesive in a way. So that's something that I look for there. This, zoom out. This just caught my eye. It's gorgeous. I can cut around here and just keep this circle of flowers. I can cut this out, or I can cover it with a focal image, a person or something there. An animal, maybe a bird or something. And this could be a very good start of a Gluebook page. I love how the flowers are circled there. Again, it's that circle pattern that I keep getting drawn to. Even the flowers have circle patterns in them. And also the fact that it's framed, it's bright colors. I think this will work very well on a Gluebook page. Okay, this is the last piece that I took from this magazine. I don't know if you can see very clearly. There's some roses in the background. There's some interesting imagery here. Lots of interesting little shapes and patterns. So definitely could cut this up and use in several backgrounds. And get you some closer images. So there's a bunch of little images here. There's some interesting hands. There's this little person here. There's this guy. There's these little images here that could be for my mini Gluebooks. These 3 images there. There's this image. This guy, this person here. Even this in the background would be for a smaller Gluebook page. So there's plenty of lovely images here that you could cut out and use in a background of, not in a background, in a focal image. For either smaller collage element like my mini books, or even on a much larger scale and just keep adding to that page. These would be some lovely images to look at. Even some of this looks kind of cool. So yeah, I don't know. I love Hendrix ads. They always have these really like eccentric, obscure looking, interesting elements in their collage. So anytime I see a Hendrix ad, I'm always wanting to tear it up and use it because they have some lovely images here. Okay, so that's where I'll stop for now. Just showing you what images I picked out of this magazine, why I like them, and then if I get a chance to play, I will record how I use some of the images in the Gluebook. Okay, so I brought out my Gluebooks to see if we have a little play in them with some of the images that I found and some images that I have already. I'm not sure if we'll be doing the big book, but most definitely we'll probably do a little bit in the mini Gluebook. So I'll try to film some of that so that you can see what my process is and how I make a page. So we're going to focus on the mini Gluebook 1 because it's just easier to work on at this moment. Since I'm not at my typical crafting spot, I'm kind of working in bed because I'm still with my wisdom teeth. So, but I wanted to play around since I'm feeling a little bit better today than I was the last couple days. So here we go. I usually keep my images in something like this. It's a cookie container. This is for my mini images. It's a bit of a mess right now. I have to organize. So I just took some stuff out. And these are some bigger focal pieces. And actually this should go into here. This is pieces of interest and backgrounds. And these are my smaller images and some of my fussy cut images that are small. So these will be the main ones I probably will be looking into before I go into the bigger ones, because the big ones might take up most of the page. And since we're only working with a small part of the page here, this is comparison. I have my other sketchbook, my normal big sketchbook open, and I have the mini book right in there. So you can see how small it is and how much of an actual page, put it closer, how much of an actual page I have to work on. It's not much. So I would want to use these images first before going into these, because then you don't have any much space to work with. First, I would want to build the background. As you can see here, I used the bigger image, but it was a background image. So that's okay, because we're going to build upon that background image. But you see all the little ones I've used. I didn't use huge amounts of images. This is the monkey is the biggest one because I wanted that to be the main attention that you focus on. I used light colors here, green and orange, and I have that repeated throughout the collage. So that's something also to consider when you're working with your collages. You want to find ways to mirror the colors or make the pieces feel like they fit together. And sometimes you could do that with colors, sometimes you could do that with shape, or if there are similar items. Anyway, these methods can make the piece feel like it's together, because the piece is quite choppy. As you can see, there's like a bunch of little pieces. But the fact that I'm using the orange throughout, and the fact that there's green there on the top and bottom to mirror the monkey, it sort of feels like the piece goes together, even though it's a bunch of pieces all over the place. So that's just something to consider when you're working with that, with your collage. And when you're working with a smaller space, you have to think about that even more, because there's less space to work with. So I'm just trying to find a clean page here so we can start to work. I've done quite a much pages here in background, so we're running low. Might be moving on to my mini glue book 2 that I already have prepared. And once I find a way of making it to that one, I will do a flip through of this one as well. And you got a little sneak preview there. All right, so let's work with this bottom page. It's easier for me to work with bottom pages. So I'm going to open it to the bottom. And let's see. Let's look at some of these backgrounds. I'm going to first look with the ones I have cut out. Then I'm going to go back to those pages I showed before and see if I can cut some things out of that and use that as well. So let's kind of fan out our background pages here. Background images, sorry. See if there's anything that draws my attention. So there's quite a lot, so I'm not going to fan it out too much, because then we won't have no space to work in. Bring that back. Then I'm going to fan out my focal images on the side so I can kind of see what grabs my attention and what pieces might work together. Okay, so you can see here what type of images I look for, especially in a mini book. It's not too different from any of my larger collages, except for the size. Most of the elements can be the same. You have eyes, you have butterflies, you have cars, you have small focal images, small full-size images there. You have these guys that are really interesting. I actually might pick these guys up to play with. Where he has wings already. You don't have to add the wings. There are already wings there. So that's already interesting. These chairs, you could fussy cut them out and add them to a scenery. This guy is a small focal image. So these are some pretty cool images to start with when you're thinking with a collage, especially something small scale. These are very interesting on their own. So I think we're going to play around with those two here. I have a fussy cut version of it, and then I have a square version. So we're going to see which one I gravitate to. They're the same image. They're off a book. It's just a boy with wings sitting down. I don't know if you can see it very clearly. Give me a second. Probably as clear as you're going to get it, because it's not really focusing. The image is quite small, so it just might be giving me quite a bit of problems focusing with that. Hopefully it doesn't malfunction on me while I'm filming this and you can see clearly what I'm doing. Minute. I'm also not using my rig, so if the image is a little shaky, I apologize for that. I am using, I'm holding it with my hand and working with my other hand, which is somewhat problematic, but I can't put the rig on my bed, so we're gonna work with that. So right off the bat, this image kind of calls to me. I know it's the same color. We're going almost monochrome right now, but the texture on the image and the color works really well with that. I really wish this would focus clearer. All right. So if I'm saying these two images, what else draws my attention? This kind of draws my attention. And as you can see here, it's kind of repeated with this. This is a more rustic, more distressed, if you want to say. This is a little more neater, but if you look at it, they're both kind of the same thing. They're like lines going up and down. So that could be why both of them are drawing my attention. It seems like something like that may be great to have something like this on it. So it could be the color, it could be whatever, but since they're similar in that aspect, I'm thinking that might be what's drawing my attention right now. Let's see what we got here. This is just a black image. Is there anything else drawing my attention? Maybe this water image. Maybe take a piece of that. That might work for it. I'm not sure yet. You know, now that I look at these three images together, it kind of gives you that, the elemental stuff. Like, for instance, the tree bark over here, it's like earth. This is water, and then he's kind of resembles air. So I don't know if that's also what's drawing me to these images, the elemental aspect of that. So these might be what I end up using in the final, and it's pretty cool that happened. So it's not consciously something I'm thinking of, but in my subconscious, my mind is already trying to make a connection with these elements. So that's helpful when you're doing a collage. Your mind already might take you somewhere you may not have thought. I would have never thought, let's make an element collage. Like, I was just like, let's make a collage with this boy because he's interesting. So it's interesting when you let your mind kind of go where it goes. Just see where the images draw you. I also have this one. I'm not sure if I want to use that because it might be too busy. But I'm going to put that aside because maybe there's a small aspect that it might work on. So I'm just grabbing the images right now and I'm going to put them to the sides and then I'll play with them on the page. Okay. Okay. So I'm not seeing much here, but I do see this, and this is interesting. It adds some circles to a page, some numbers to the page. You can see here. My focus really isn't playing well with me today. If anyone has those like focus images that y'all use to get your camera to focus, I could benefit from one because it seems like it doesn't want to pick it up. All right, so I think we're going to stop with these images and see how I play around with those. So I'm going to put these all out the way. Take these off. Okay, and I just need to get my pieces. So I'm going to pause real quick. And we're back. So I just needed to get my scissors and my grate. Sorry, I haven't been working one-handed, so I don't have to pause when I have to reach for things. Okay, let's see what we got. What do I want to see? Let's play with it before we even start to glue. I'm putting the full image here, but the full image might not, stop getting in my way, might not make it, but I'm just kind of looking to see. So right off the bat, everything is too square. So I might want to, like, if I'm using all of these images the way I might want to tear a piece or something, or use a tear piece on top just to blend the images a little bit because they're very square. So let me show you what that would look like if I put this image just on here without altering this in any way. So let's first take the square image. I mean, that could work for some people, but the whole fact of the squares kind of takes me away from the images. I don't get that same aspect I was looking at before with the elements in play and it feeling flowy. It doesn't feel flowy to me. Even if I take and use the fussy cut one. Let's put that right here. Now the fussy cut image looks a little better on the tree trunk image on the bottom. That looks really nice together. But again, the background is a little too square for me. So let's figure out how we're going to change that to make it look better. Okay, I was playing around with it. I came up with something like this. Now, I'm not sure. It looks a little busy in the background, so I'm not sure it quite works. But I had this like blue watercolor effect type background to kind of resemble air, like him in the sky or something. I brought this to bring movement. It's wavy, so the movement may give it the element of the sky moving or him moving. Not quite sure this is on the right side, if I should have that this way or facing more up and down. Up here it sort of works, but it still feels like something is missing. I don't know if maybe this may not be a good image to use there, or maybe I need to bring this up more to take away some of that edging so it's a little bit more light. There is fairly a lot of dark images and he's very dark on his own, so it may be hard to see him. Maybe I need to fussy cut him out a bit. I'm still playing around with it. Let's see. So since I'm kind of struggling with this background a bit, I need some other pieces. I am consulting my scrap pile. And in my scrap pile is basically anything that's left over after I'm working that I still may find interesting or could use as a background. Most of the times I use my scraps in my mini book because the scraps tend to be smaller, so I can use more pieces in there. So it's just a bag full of my scraps. So we're gonna go through my scraps and see if I can pull out any images, any backgrounds that might work with this. Maybe lighten it up a bit so he's more in focus. I'm also thinking I may need to fussy cut him a little bit more. Because that dark background is kind of not allowing him to be focused. It's kind of making him everything seem a little too dark around him, and it's hard to make him out. I think if I fussy cut him a little bit more, he'll be more in focus. And I also might want to lighten up the background just a tad, so maybe add a little scrap that may lighten up a bit. And I think that could work. So that's what I'm going to try now. Okay, so I am back, and you see that I've picked out, I haven't done anything with this background, it's just staying there because I'm just entertaining new images. So I went through my scrap pile and I just picked out whatever brought my attention in the same kind of color, I guess it's a color pattern. I went for mostly monochromatic colors, so like grays, beiges, like whites. Like this one has a little bit of color, but it's mostly like a cream or off-white kind of color. Some blue, but as you can tell, like the blues that I'm going for almost have like a grayish element to it. So I seem to be wanting this picture to be mostly a similar shade. That's just like, I basically shut off, said, look at these scraps, pick the ones that come to your attention the quickest, not think about it very clearly. I mean, unconsciously, I am thinking about it. My brain is making connections. So it's making connections to the colors that I want to use here, and it's bringing me those kind of color schemes, right? The other thing you might notice is these images right here, these black little lines, it looks like a makeup smear, kind of resemble this one right here, this one next to him. It's a little with movement. So my eye decides it needs a little movement to the page. So it's picking up on that image of movement, and it's wanting to add movement onto the page. This is another thing. It's sky, and it looks like there's snow or something. So that sky background, that blue background, it's looking for that as well. Maybe to cut off all the black, maybe to bring that sky element. Because as you can tell, like when I was talking to you earlier, my mind was already making connections with ground, water, and air, and I didn't purposely try to make that connection. I could not have thought that clearly about what this composition would look like. But subconsciously, my mind is still working. I just need to let it play in the background, entertain whatever is going on with the connections that it's making, and then figure out what works best for my page. I know that seems a little vague, and maybe that's not how your mind works, and that's okay. I'm just kind of sharing my process of how my mind is working. So I have a little bit of pattern, and then it's got blue and it's got white, because I want to try to lighten it up. So I was trying to find like a whitish background or a light color background to add behind him so that he's more in focus. It kind of looks a little like raindrops, but then it's not. It's like those paisleys. I don't know what you call them. Maybe saying the wrong word, but that's what they are. But from far, they kind of can resemble either leaves or raindrop or something to that aspect. So, I mean, it's still kind of similar to what I was talking about before, and it looks like there's movement with those images right here. They're all going different ways, so there's kind of a movement. So my brain is telling me I need movement on this page because this page is very too still. There's all these lines. He's just sitting there. It could work, but my brain is telling me it wants some kind of movement in there. And it may be because he does have the wings. And when you see something with wings, you think movement. So my brain may make that connection that he has wings, we need movement. Here's some images that have movement. So that's another thing. Water came up again in this image, and where's another? I know I've seen another image with water. Oh, this image. And I'm kind of liking this one more than this. Because it's, again, has more of a grayish tone than a bluish tone. And there's some movement there with the water. It might be enough to cut some of the staleness out as well. So I could use that piece to add movement. I could use this piece to add movement. I don't necessarily need these pieces or the piece that's right next to him. So I got to figure out what element I enjoy most. So I have to play around with it, take things out, and see if that image of movement is enough where I don't have to add other images, or if I want to change the image of movement in there. Another thing I want to focus on is these things right here. I don't know what they are, but they're like light color gray background. That might be nice to go behind him. If you might be able to see him more clearly when there's a lot more white. Yeah, same with this. So maybe I want to cut up that a bit and then add that right behind him. The thing is, I want to lighten up the area behind him because he's pretty dark. So that's kind of where my mind is right now. So I'm going to play around, trying to figure out what the composition will be more like. I'll have a couple options and I'll show you what I mean. Okay, so I played around with it and I've kind of got something similar to this. Now you may be saying, okay, why did you put him against the black background when you wanted to lighten it up? And the one thing is I still needed that movement, and I wanted that movement to be more associated with him. So by putting that and this water behind him, it adds that movement element. So it almost gives an illusion that he's flying, even though he's just sitting there grounded. This is just my idea at the moment. I don't know. I may change this again before I decide, because my mind is very finicky today. I did add these elements here onto the sides of it to cut this like square element of that movement background, and also this right here to lighten it all. So it's not just black in the background. So you can see him a little bit clearly. You can see his wings. I'm going to bring him down a little bit so you can see his wings. It's just very hard to move him because he's such a tiny little thing. Yeah, I really wish this is clear. For some reason, this is not focusing. Focus. Focus. And focus. Yeah, I don't know what's going on with my camera, so you can't really see as clearly as I would love you to see this. I might have to look at my camera and see what's going on. I'm using my phone to record, so it could be that. But anyway, hopefully you get the idea that I am lightening the background a bit, and I'm also creating that movement behind him. It seems like I went away from the blues, these blues over here. This blue over here, I tried it. It just didn't seem to work for me. And went more for this like pale blue-green color right here. So if you can't really tell, but in the water, there's that pale green tone as well. And then in these, it's got a cream white color, but here there's that pale blue-green color as well. So that seemed to take more focus. I'm still not sure about this water in the corner. I know I want the water droplets because I just think it looks nice with it, but I'm not sure if that's the right water droplets I should use because it seems much darker now that I've lightened the background. I like that I framed it with these lines here on the top and the bottom. The numbers I like. So right now what I'm trying to figure out is making sure that he's clear in the background. So when I put him at an angle, he's not getting obscured by this black. And maybe figuring out if I want to keep that or change that. Now, I don't know if this makes this collage better or worse than when we first started, but sometimes going and letting your mind take over and not thinking too much. Like, yes, I was thinking about color tone, but my brain was making all these other connections that I didn't need to really focus on immediately. It was adding movement. It was adding elements to it. Air, fire, wind. No, fire is the only one it didn't connect to. Wind, air, ground. It was bringing those elements I wasn't even thinking about. It was adding the movement. The only thing I may have been focused on is the color tone of what I wanted to go. And my brain followed that. My brain followed that color tone, but it added these other elements that I wouldn't have thought about. So sometimes when you're playing, it might be, it's not easy for everyone, but it might be more productive for you to just focus on maybe one element of it and just let your brain kind of sit with it and kind of throw a bunch of images in front of it and see what it picks up. See what it then when you have all the images in front of you, see what these images have in common. Now, if I didn't have all these images in front of me and I was just picking it at random and gluing right away, I wouldn't have made that connection that maybe my brain wants to see movement. Maybe my brain wants to see water. Maybe my brain wants to see that kind of element added to it. And I would have probably just glued it straightforward with the squares, and it wouldn't have brought the same kind of excitement and energy to the piece as it's bringing now. Again, I still had to lighten a little bit because there is that black right here behind him that I'm worried about obscuring him. But I'm liking the image a little bit more. So we're getting very close to how this is going to look. So I may leave it like this for a minute, step away from it, because I have a tendency of keep messing with it until I don't like it anymore. So I'm trying to work on that. So what I'm going to do is let this sit with the way it is, go away from it, come back and see if I still like this image in the corner, and see if there's something I want better than that, and seeing how the image works again cohesively. If I feel like the elements fit enough, I will begin gluing. Okay, so it's not very clean. The papers are kind of thrown all over. But you get the idea of what I'm looking for. I've lightened him back where so you can see his wings. And let's see if it focuses, if I can look at it, something like this. No, you're not gonna focus. Okay, so you see I've lightened the area around his wings. I've kept the water droplets, but I changed it. And you can see why. Here, it had a really dark element. So since we lightened everything, that dark was standing out. and it wasn't really bringing the piece together. Since we lightened everything, I wanted to keep it a little lighter. So I brought this and I cut this out. I'm going to trim this side because it's a little dark right here. But I brought that out. And as you can see, the water droplets here are more larger. And they even give the kind of resemblance of maybe teardrops. So maybe it brings a kind of emotional element to the piece. Or just a more fullness of the droplets could be just bringing something to the piece itself. So I like this better. My brain just likes this droplets better than the little tiny ones. So if we put it together again, you can see. So here, there was droplets. They're both droplets, but one is more circular. These are a little more oval. These have a little more body to them. These are very tiny and sporadic. So something about this is drawing a more emotional connection to the piece than this. So that's why I changed it. Yeah, so I think we might be ready to glue. I might bring this white above this to cut the sharpness there. But other than that, I think we might be okay to glue. I think this looks good. And hopefully you will agree once the final piece is done. Or maybe you'll just see a different element that you can start to incorporate in your work. Because we all view art differently, but sometimes it's great to add to our toolbox. So this is just something that just popped up. I didn't plan it, but hopefully that helps you think about your creative pieces a little differently. Okay, so this is what I have for the final piece all glued down. I like it. The only thing I'm worried right here is this might be a little too much of a blank space. But that's fine because I can always come back and add something there. Maybe it just needs a saying, words to block off that whiteness so it won't be too empty up there. Or maybe there might be a small little element I want to add to it. Maybe I find another one of him and maybe I have them flying in the air. I don't know yet, but I know that there's opportunity to go back and edit that part a little bit later. This element added a little bit of that shine in the background, as you can see. I found a piece that had that, and I thought that would be real great right above his head. So it kind of gives it that angelic effect or that angel kind of halo effect of him. Yeah, there's a lot of bits and pieces here. So it may not seem as cohesive as I want it to be, but I can always come back and touch up little bits of empty spaces or corners. Overall, though, I do enjoy the image. I may cut this little piece off because it's a little sharp right here. Like there's a sharp angle. I might break that little piece off, and that'll open up this spot a little bit more. But the background itself on him looks really good. I covered a lot of that black background, so it's a lot lighter behind him, but there's still peaks of that little bit of black squiggly movement behind him. The water element too, it adds a little bit of movement behind him. Yeah, on the paisleys, I'm assuming that's what they're called. I keep forgetting, but I think they're called paisleys. The paisleys over here. Oh, come on. There you go. It's starting to focus now. That gives it movement. So the movement is all behind him. Finally. You can see him very clearly now. So the movement's all around him. So even though he's still, it kind of gives the illusion of movement, even though he's just sitting there. So that's pretty cool. And like I said, this gives like an emotional element as well to it. And I still mirrored with these two to kind of frame it. And on top and bottom, framing it. I'm glad it's focusing now. So I'm quite happy with this image. Even though it may not quite be done, I might have to revisit, make a couple touch-ups. Right now, I'm happy with it. And if I keep messing with it right now, I may take it to a place where I actually do not like the background or the image or the collage. So I don't want to overwork it. If I'm unhappy with a particular element, I can come back with fresh eyes and see if I need to add that to it or change something to it. But if I try to do it where I'm not in that mindset or I'm trying to force something, it may create something that I'm not happy with. And I've done that plenty times before. So I'm trying to avoid doing that. But right now, as I look at it, I enjoy it. I like it. There's some element there that kind of is drawn to me. And it could be that I followed my brain's processes. Like I let my brain kind of play and pick up on these elements that I didn't normally wouldn't have noticed, and played with them a little bit. It's still kind of monochrome, but it has some different shades. So I'm happier with it. It's less dark. It's more brighter. So yeah, I'm happy with this piece. What do you guys think of it? Did you enjoy it? Did you enjoy the process and me talking through and showing you how I go about creating a collage? Was that helpful? Was it helpful talking about different connections that you can make between images and items to make that collage? Comment below. Let me know what's helpful for you, so that I can keep that in mind for next video. And things that you want to see. Is this process videos of me making one collage? Is that something that you want to see more of, or would you rather see more flip throughs of them later? Just comment below. Let me know what you're interested in seeing, and I will try to accommodate you as best as I can. If you enjoyed this, give it a like, share it to someone who might like it. Follow our Facebook group, Any Creativity, that's one word, apostrophe S Creations. There's a space in between that, between creativities and creations, and inspirations. So it's Any Creativities, Creations, and Inspiration is the Facebook group. And I've linked it on several other videos. So please give that a follow. Share maybe how you incorporate these ideas into your collage and share what you come up with. I would love to see your work there. And it's also a place to follow me with updates, because I don't always update on YouTube or Instagram, or maybe I'll take what I did on Instagram if you don't follow me there, and I will mirror it to that Facebook group. And once I'm able to do live, I will let you know there when a live will be scheduled. So it might be a good group for you to follow. My Instagram and them tend to be similar. So if you can't follow the Facebook group, follow the Instagram. Both of those will give you similar information. So I hope to see you then. Bye. Thank you.